Patch 1319 notes. Welcome to Patch 1319. Welcome Surrealists, and welcome to the Strat Chat. We're going to break down this World's patch, make sure that you guys have all the information so you can follow along with the World Championships. We're going to be doing a meta breakdown of what champions are going to be going in role by role, what we expect, basically like the top 10 champions that you can expect to see in each role. So stick around to the end and we'll get to that as well. In terms of balance work, we're doing a final tuning pass on several champions who've had an outsized impact on the pro scene this summer. The interesting thing is pros haven't played on like the last 4 patches. So they've made changes, but they haven't had any like verification apart from the Asia games. So it'll be interesting to see what they use to regulate that. And otherwise doing more routine balance on champions or builds whose overall power level is out of line. In other news, this patch we're introducing new ranked restrictions and ping adjustments to help tackle toxicity, great. A new audio accessibility update for global ultimates, a brand new skin line, La Ilusión. I'm glad that they're doing this, and you know what? This is a shout out to the ever-growing Latin America North and South, just the entire Latin Americas. Welcome. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I know we have some people that have contacted about coaching from those servers. I appreciate you guys all hanging out. Y si quieren la versión en español, puedo hacerlo también. And the Tenfold Triumph Chroma set to also be testing some new introductory bot AI on PBE. So check it out if you're interested. That'll actually be pretty cool, and I'll definitely have Landon check it out. It's our first patch after our final mid-set update. TFT. Okay. Patch highlights. This is the rundown. Here we go. Those skins look pretty sweet. I'm eager to see what we've got here. Yep. Everything kind of makes sense so far. Although buffs are always going to be a little bit dangerous, especially some of these champions were already pretty fringe playable. So we'll see what we get. All right, starting with champions. Azir Q cooldown increased. This champion is in the pits of solo queue, but still gets played all over the place in pro. Now, I do think that it is just categorically weaker than Taliyah right now. So I don't think you should ever be playing Azir when Taliyah is up. I think it's just a B tier champion, even in pro. But that being said, the kit does allow you to do so much, especially with champions like Poppy. And it's been all over the world's meta. So I'm not surprised to see it get taken down one more time. You've got the cooldown on the Q. It's going up 2 seconds at early ranks, down to 6 is still the same. Now, for a long time, maxing W has been the play for Azir, and everything that they've done has been in a move to make that happen. This is a move in the opposite direction where you might want more points in Q depending on matchups. So this is really going to come down to whether or not your harass can slide in between what the other champion is doing at a reasonable pace. Yes, the W is still the better bang for the buck as far as how much stats you're getting for leveling it up. But this window increase of an extra 2 seconds between Qs, if you're a champion like Aurelia playing against Azir, the moment that the Azir casts Q, you've gotten in and they can't really reposition short of just casting another W and E to slide out. So they look to punish this window. This is going to be a drastic hit for pro game as far as how well Azir can lane. That being said, most times Azir has a pretty good laning phase and people want to pick him for how much power he has throughout the game. So I still expect him to see play, but I don't think he's going to be in that 90% threshold. Probably one of those like 30% type mid laners. Briar. Briar has enough for its own video. We're going to do a whole Briar. I'm just going to slowly show you everything that's going on with Briar. I also put it on the tab on the outside. You can't see, but there are 23 references to Briar in these patch notes. So stick around, and at the end, I'll go and break it down Briar and all the changes. Noticeably, they didn't change the most obvious interaction that I thought was wrong, but we'll see. I don't know. Galio, our cooldown decreased, so they wanted to get more of these team play fights. Galio is good for pro metas. It is an action-packed champion, tends to be, and unless you get into a team fight versus poke scenario. The ultimate going down in cooldown, this is going to bring it in line with some of the other changes. Now, I would have said it would have jumped it to land at the same point as Gangplank, but it's actually worth noting that look who's next on the list. It's Gangplank, and guess what's getting hit? The ultimate. So there are some windows where you will be able to trade R for R, but then the next time they will have a 10-second window on you. Galio is a strong pick, all right? Galio is a very strong pick. Unfortunately, there are some meta mid laner marksmen that will completely ravage Galio if given the option. That said, even those can be beaten, especially if you have an engage from a support as well. So if you have a guaranteed knock up from someone like Vi plus Galio, Vi got rebuffed a couple times. Galio has really good synergy. You pair their ultimates together, that is unstoppable, unfappable. Just you will get into their backline no matter what, and you can punish a champion like Tristana. So I do expect Galio to make it into the meta. I don't think this change is what puts him over the top of anything, but it's just a nice quality of life, and I think it'll be good, especially when we have this like 70% engage support meta that Galio can follow up on with the Blitzcranks, the Leonas, the Rels of the world, okay? Gangplank also plays into that meta. Now, if you want to have the premier weak side champion, Gangplank was always it. Also very good into tanks. That being said, tanks have taken quite a big hit after dominating in the spring and last year. So I don't expect to see too much Gangplank just from a base meta, but let's see the changes. The cooldown decreased, Death's Daughter upgrade slow increased, and Raise Morale upgrade movement speed increased, right? So you can check it out here. 10 seconds across all ranks. The fact that you have it at 130 now at late levels is great. The slow for 1 second going up 15%. This is pretty significant. This is enough to guarantee landing. 60% could dodge some skill shots. 75% can dodge none. All right, there are no skill shots that you can stop if aimed on your head. You'll have to use a dash ability to get away from them. Raise morale movement speed going from 30% to 40. So basically, they wanted to take out all of the power. Everyone just goes for that big cannonball first, and they just wait for someone to get locked up and then drop a cannonball on their head. They want this like more niche, like let's make a play with Gangplank. I love these changes. I love that both of these things are getting buffed. They're such a small part of the kit, but they are getting a nice little touch up, plus the ability to cast them. So if you do see Scions in the top lanes, for example, you might expect Gangplanks to show up and just be a source of weak side gold. And then you can play for 1/3/1s or 1/4 compositions. Jhin, cautiously optimistic about Jhin. Our minimum physical damage is increased. Now, this may seem like it's not very much. A lot of 4s are added to the kit. I'm surprised that they didn't just add the ratio here to 44 or something like that. But when you remember that this gets hit 4 times, right? This 14 damage might actually be 56 damage, right? You're looking at a significant chunk. This is 80 damage. This is 160 damage potentially being hit across all levels. So Jhin was already in a pretty solid spot, and this is probably going to be enough to get him over the top. Jhin is one of the most popular champions in the game, so I'm not surprised that they want Jhin in the meta. We'll talk about Jin's spot and what he's going to do, but the best spot for Jhin is when you want that spellcaster down in bot lane. Really good for poke setup, but also specifically great when you want a Rift Herald on your team, because he's one of the best champions to rotate over to mid lane. He's got long range to help, even when he's just level 6 and on half an item. LeBlanc has been the narrative of the past 6 months because of Static Shiv and everything that they tried to do. And rather than just take away the interaction from LeBlanc, they tried to play with Static Shiv, and they ended up with 6 months of patch notes. Anyways, we're getting a fairly sizable change here. So I'm going to read the whole thing. LeBlanc's core build has shifted into manaless AD build that turns her into a very frustrating top lane split pusher. If she wants to build like a fighter, then she should also have meaningful mana constraints, which we'll be introducing here. Meanwhile, mage builds can rely on bonus mana from sources like Lost Chapter and Luden's Tempest. Since nerfing her baseline mana pool and even her late game attack damage is a nerf to her mage power level, we're giving her compensation in the form of some AP ratios. The change to her attack speed ratio and attack speed growth will result in identical attacks per second for LeBlanc unless she acquires sources of bonus attack speed. So this is a shout out to Static Shiv, right? Attack speed ratio doesn't matter, right? This is only if you buy items, but they're basically saying like items with attack speed suck on this champion. That's what they're saying. You get very, very little. Attack speed growth is going up. Attack damage growth is going down. Mana growth down by 30, which is huge. That said, most times you're using Q to last hit in lane, you're not really feeling the mana losses, but you will feel this in the mid game when you start split pushing. Mana regeneration growth is going down as well. Distortion, getting 5% extra AP, and Ethereal Chains on the initial cast, another 5%. So giving her a little bit extra mage power, trying to take it out of the hands of Static Shiv. Now, Static Shiv was great, and it solved a lot of LeBlanc's problems, but giving her extra AP at no cost means that we're putting her in the territory that Faker might start blind picking LeBlanc at Worlds. So it's close. We're very close to what that level is, especially since they kept on like giving these small nudges. We're like, all right, we have to tone down what Static Shiv and all that does. Officially, Static Shiv is no longer a thing, in my opinion. The top laner, it's fine, right? If you're going to top lane with Trinity Force and Static Shiv and you're just building for that, you're using the Lightning for poke and then Triforce for the proc, and you want to get one extra hit. Like, it's interesting, and I could see it maybe showing up at Worlds, but I'm more concerned with the fact that AP buffs are just going to make this champion show up as the assassin, and her burst hasn't been checked in a while because no one's just been building 3 straight AP items like Ludens into Shadowflame into Rabadons or Void Staff. So keep an eye on LeBlanc and her spot in the meta. One of the other champions that is good against LeBlanc has been buffed multiple times. That's Lissandra, and she'll be coming up next. But first we have Lee Sin. Base armor increased. W lifesteal and spell vamp increased. E magic damage increased. This is huge. This is another nod towards being one of the healthiest junglers coming out of the camp. Also, specifically, if you don't have to level your W at level 1, like if you're getting a leash, then you're basically going to be full health. Sometimes you wanted to level W to make sure that you weren't taking too much damage from red, for example, when you were starting your clear, and you just wanted to make sure that you had more procs, more extra auto attacks. Now having extra armor means you're just going to be coming out way healthier every single time. Iron Will, an extra 5 lifesteal and spell vamp at early levels is kind of insane. They're taking some of it away later, but giving it to the early game, this is kind of crazy. E Tempest, magic damage, going same early, losing some late. Wait, did they say losing? They said increased, didn't they? E magic damage increased. Doesn't look like increased, folks. This looks like a decrease. So we're going to see whether or not this is written backwards, or whether or not it is, or whether or not this was written backwards. This will change completely what the champion is capable of. If this is written backwards and this is actually supposed to be a buff, then Lee Sin's going to be one of the highest priority champions, which makes sense. China is one of the favorites, and Lee Sin is the most popular champion in the game in China. Lissandra, W root duration increased, talking about LeBlanc counterplay. Lissandra's been on thin ice in terms of power, both in terms of solo queue and pro play. I disagree. She's been extravagantly good recently. They just haven't had time to play her that much. To increase her power as a counterpick against certain champions like LeBlanc, Fizz, and Akali, we're slightly increasing the root duration of her W. The intention is to increase her advantage against champions who need to get up close to trade while not affecting other matchups. So the root duration going up by 0.15. Okay, 1/6 of a second on the buff. This can be the duration, the difference between getting an extra spell off, right? So getting your full QE, getting everything off during that route. The relative value of putting points in it is still going to be 0.1, and that's going to be going down, like your relative growth. 0.1 growth off of 1.25 is less than relative to 1.1. That being said, you're still going to want it in the matchups where you're dealing with these dashes. And if that's what you're getting it for, that's a huge part of the kit, and you're absolutely going to be leveling this second in those matchups. Expect Lissandra to be a huge counter pick at Worlds, especially if Akali and LeBlanc make it in. Nunu Willump, the EAP ratio increased. Now, AP Nunu, people have been having a lot of fun with it. Kesha being on the top of the list, that guy is absolutely crazy, but we love watching him play Nunu, and every time that he gets a 800-point bite into somebody. Magic damage per hit is gaining 5% AP. Now, you're hitting with them 3 times, okay? And then it's cast. So this is actually a fairly significant buff. When you look at maximum total magic damage, all right, 135 is turning to 215. You see this high AP ratio. This is a lot, okay? This is a lot. I cannot reiterate enough. It is a lot of damage. So I don't know if this makes the build for Nunu. I don't think AP Nunu is going to make it into the world's metagame, but it should be kind of fun to watch. Pike, health growth increased, W cooldown decreased. They were talking about this champion a lot last patch. Pike has been lurking below the surface recently and not in his usual I'm fine being underwater sense, but more like he's just not quite where we want him to be in terms of power. To give him some power back without making his damage too oppressive, we'll be increasing his mid to late game survivability. We also intend to give Pike an alternative ability max option with W for lanes where he won't be aggressively using E as much. All right, so they're adding some scaling to W to make it an option between whether or not you want W or E. His health growth is going up by 6. This is notable because it's the only way that Pike gains health is by getting this per level bonus. The cooldown going down by 2 seconds is fairly substantial. And does give you some reason to get that W to lurk around in these like poking matchups, less about the all-ins and more about like scouting around. That's going to give you some neat options for playing. Not only that, but it's near 100% uptime. If you go W at this low amount, and let's say you've got 80 haste, then you hover your Q, you're holding, you let go, you can W again. All right, so you're basically going to have permanent W to Q uptime. Rek'Sai, the problem child. All right, Rek'Sai, the problem child, has been hotly debated. Rek'Sai was so strong last year, and I can't believe that people didn't play it. It's been so strong all of this year, and people still didn't play it. I don't know why. This is probably finally going to be the straw that breaks her back. Let's take a delve in. Passive heal decreased, Q damage decreased, unburrow movement speed decreased, base damage increased. Rek'Sai gained a lot of power with the Stride Breaker buffs a few patches ago, so we're taking another swing at bringing her down to her power level. Instead of primarily targeting her early damage, though we are providing some small changes here, we're targeting the power level of burrowing, which high MMR players use disproportionately well, as she's not nearly as strong in other skill brackets, right? And this is where Smurfs, Rek'Sai is one of the number one Smurf champions to go down climb. You just stomp. You're just always healthier than enemy Rek'Sais. Low level Rek'Sais really need to read the entire kit and figure out all the things that she can do. Watch someone like Yanko's player and just emulate what he does. One of the best to do it. Maximum heal when burrowed, all right, is going down from 125 to 10. Increases each individual level? Okay, is 10 supposed to go up? I think they mean for this to be 10 up to something. You know, Riot's never messed up a patch note before. To be the second one in these notes alone. But I don't know exactly what they're trying to get to here. If it's just 10, then obviously this is a gargantuan nerf. Plus the 10%, this will hit the late game where you're building all the AD items. Queen's Wrath. Bonus physical damage going down by 4% of your total AD early, but you're keeping it later. Burrow. 15, 20, 25, 30. Now you don't get that same movement speed. It's lower at all ranks, and it's going to be lower where you don't have a bonus at 16. So a tremendous nerf to the bonus move speed going around here. This is a big crutch. And unburrow, physical damage, 50, 80% bonus AD. You're getting a large amount of damage here, but this is generally what was scaled last because it only gave that extra 15. Now that it gives the extra 35 per rank, you might see some extra W points in W, but still unlikely. There's too much burst in the E and in the Q. Giving some power back, I get it. I don't like that they're making kind of like this big sweeping change to a champion that they're like, shoot, we don't know what to do with her. It all is going to depend what this is. I assume it's going to be a decrease, and this is written maybe correctly, but I don't know what they mean by increases each individual level, but it's 10, so it should be 10 to 110, for example. Who knows? Rek'Sai will be taken down a peg. This is probably enough to keep her out of pro meta. That being said, she is the best level 3 fighter in the game, right? Right there with Xin Zhao. So if they want to have snowballing lanes, or if they want to tip the scales on two sides of the map, adjacent sides, let's say mid and top, Rek'Sai is the best vertical jungler in the game. She's got super high mobility and she's got the tremor sense. So if your team wants that, they're still going to want Rek'Sai. But these nerfs are probably enough to take her down where she's not just going to be auto pick. Renekton, base magic damage decreased. They've been moving towards Kennen being a counter pick for Renekton for a long time now. This is also going to impact matchups in your games like Teemo and Shen, right? Just champions that were pretty good against Renekton that recently just haven't been that great. Shen has its own problems, right? They took so much power out of his kit. The durability patch and the change to the minion aggro onto turret, meaning that you couldn't taunt aggro onto someone. All of those changes have made Renekton kind of just overperforming into some of those matchups. They're taking away some of the MR. This is going to open up some more counterpicking. We love games that have Kennen in them. Kennen Renekton is exciting for Worlds. Expect to see a lot of that. Or some B3 Kennen bans with the expectation of taking Renekton right away and testing to see what does someone have ready to go. It is worth noting that most of Jax's kit now deals magic damage, and this will be a substantial tip out of that matchup where Renekton, ever since Jax's have learned to build Grasp, Jax should be able to just take over this matchup now. That extra 18 damage that you're going to deal with your combo is going to matter. Syndra, Q magic damage increased. All right, she kind of needed this, a little bit of love. That being said, she was already getting played, so she's just getting 5. It just happens all game. You know, it is all game. I'm sure they're careful to not want bot lane Syndra to come back, but let's see what they say about it. Syndra is an iconic mid lane champion who has historically been stuck in pro jail. Thankfully, her update in 12.19 has given us the space to make her strong in the hands of the most players without being a pro play problem. With this newfound power budget, we'll be increasing her Q base damage slightly to help her get early lane priority, amping up a slim strategic niche amongst mages. Basically, her Q got doubled in cooldown. You couldn't spam it nearly as much. It's still one of the more spammable spells, and getting 5 damage does mean that you're going to have access to about 18 of these per recall. Okay, you can cast this about 18 times if you're killing minions and you have Dorans or you have Corrupting Potion, whatever it is. So an extra 5 damage, if you're hitting half of those, that adds up, okay? And that's going to matter in laning phase in particular. It's not going to matter so much in the end game, but the extra 5 damage just, you know, it stacks up. It helps her across the board. She will get played for sure. Pros love having the setup, long range setup from the mid lane. She's the kind of the iconic pro mid laner, that Nazir and Victor maybe, that just have that long range. They can set up, they can do things for their team. I expect to see Syndra at Worlds, right? She's already present. This isn't the change that's making it go over, but this extra 5 damage, right? We talked about it. It's going to be about 45 damage over the course of your lane phase, and that matters. That's meaningful, okay? That's going to allow champions like Chovy to eke out that last little advantage. Twitch, the R missile speed is increased. This is to make some of the feels bad moments where sometimes you turned on your ultimate and suddenly your attacks could miss, whereas normally attacks couldn't miss, and now they could because they were just firing, and people with really high mobility or dashes like Kalista could just dodge all of them. And that felt really bad. So increasing the move speed makes it almost impossible to be dashing reactively to dodge this. You can still flash for a complete outplay, but you're probably only dodging 1 missile if you do that. Zeri, just one last little nudge to make sure she doesn't make it into a pro play. I think it's happened. They've finally buried her. She's still the premium 131 champion in the game just based on her kit, but losing a little bit of move speed does make her a little bit more susceptible to getting caught out in that situation. That said, if a team really wants to go 131 with like Braum Zeri, that's a serious problem of a lane and a setup in 131 kind of split push where you might have something like Fiora that you want to work into one lane, or potentially if your team had Gangplank, right, and you just want to set up, okay, we're going to win in multiple different lanes. We can play Syndra, Gangplank, Zeri, Braum, and then, I don't know, whatever you want from the jungle from there. Items. Randuin's Omen getting a huge buff, 300 to the cost. They've continuously patched this item to be better and better into the crit instances where it's good, to the point where it's super cost effective now. If the enemy team has 2 people building crit, this is the item to buy. And if those are the only 2 ADs on the team, Randuin's Omen will like blank their damage. You can just be the frontliner with just this item. The fact that it's going down by 300 means that more supports will be able to go to it. Randuin's Omen will be a major part of the meta, especially if we have Tristana mid, where we're going to have some more AD mids with any amount of critical strike. Also worth noting for Yone and Yasuo, right? If they exist, Randuin's Omen is a must-have against those champions. Seeker's Arm Guard also getting a nice little buff. All right, 5 armor. This is something they took away a while ago. They didn't want it to be that you could just buy Seeker's Arm Guard on a mage and just blank a Zed or blank a Kiana. They carefully took it out. They're giving half of that power back. This is enough to want to just get this item right away. You'll still be scaling up the stacks. Usually if you do, you want to pair it with Tear or Corrupting Potion to make sure that you have enough mana to go with it. Also, the fact that Tear will build into Saris, which will give you an extra defense against these teams. Now that they've also buffed Crown of the Shattered Queen, there's a chance that you just have this really strong setup as mage into assassin, which is something they kind of needed. Mages were too weak to the assassins. I'm happy that this is coming back. There's reason to rush Verdant, and there's reasons to rush Seeker's Arm Guard. So I like that this is an interesting build path. In pro, it's basically you do it. If the matchup calls for it, you do it. Right? You're playing against AP, then yeah, you get Verdant Barrier. And if you're playing against AD, you play Seeker's Arm Guard, and you just get it right away. Static Shiv. Electroshock damage to minions, 200 to 150. This is a big nerf for a champion that we haven't spoken about, but who has been quietly getting better as metagames have shifted in her direction, and that's Vayne. There is a build that popped up that Vayne's could play, and we've been talking about it for a while, but Static Shiv into Trinity Force and then something like Phantom Dancer, and the fact that Static Shiv gave you enough zap to the backline that you could just one-shot the rest of the minions, you can't do that anymore, at least not on a Static Shiv rush. So this is a very meaningful nerf. This also basically across the board blanks all uses where you Static Shiv into whatever random spell was clearing them. So Kaisa Q will no longer work until it's upgraded. Same thing, LeBlanc W with only 1 point is not going to be enough to clear those backline minions. You're going to need more. So this is going to completely change the environment for Static Shiv to the point where I don't think it's playable anymore. There might still be some uses for it. They want to poke a little bit more. I just don't think it holds up to Kraken Slayer and Collector, right? So those items are way too gold valuable. They synergize together. They can get you to whatever Navori Spike or Gale Force, or I don't think there's going to be any Infinity Edges at Worlds, but maybe, but Static Shiv I think is gone. This also hits champions like Akali. Now, Akali with 1 Q and Static Shiv proc can still clear the backline, but it's noticeable, right? You're going to notice this change. It's going to be the stats that Static Shiv gives plus this burst is just not enough to carry the item anymore. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel out a lot. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep it surreal. Peace.